Ladies and gentlemen, in the depths of our being, beyond the turbulence of thoughts and the distractions of the external world, there exists a stillness. This stillness is not emptiness. It is full of presence. It is alive. It is the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit is not something that comes and goes, nor is it something we must strive to attain. It is already here, always present, like the air we breathe. But just as one must pause to truly feel the breath, we must become aware to sense this divine presence within us. Within us. Let us then not seek the Holy Spirit as something outside of ourselves, but recognize it as the very essence of our awareness. Let us be present, open, and still, and in doing so, allow divine presence to reveal itself in every moment of our lives. The Holy Spirit is not a distant entity, nor is it something separate from our existence. It is a living, conscious presence that dwells within and around us, constantly guiding us toward deeper awareness. However, for many, the experience of the Holy Spirit feels elusive, as though it is something to be attained or called upon in times of need. In reality, it is already here, waiting, present, and always accessible. The only barrier to experiencing it fully is our own mind's tendency to be caught up in distractions, thoughts, and external preoccupations. To understand the Holy Spirit as a conscious presence, we must first recognize that it is not bound by form, words, or conceptual understanding. It is beyond human definitions, beyond religious doctrines, and beyond intellectual grasp. It is a direct, living experience, something that is felt rather than thought about. This is where many struggle because the modern mind is conditioned to analyze, label, and seek logical explanations. And yet, the presence of the Holy Spirit is not something that can be captured by thought. Instead, it is known in stillness, in the quiet space between thoughts, in the awareness that remains when all mental noise settles. Imagine standing by a still lake in the early hours of the morning. The surface is calm, undisturbed, reflecting the sky with absolute clarity. But the moment a single stone is thrown into the water, ripples form, distorting the reflection. This is what happens within us when the mind is constantly engaged in unnecessary thought. The Holy Spirit is like the deep stillness of the lake. It is always there, but when we allow our minds to be restless, we cannot perceive it clearly. When we speak of the Holy Spirit as a conscious presence, we must understand the significance of awareness itself. Awareness is not something we possess. It is something we are. It is the essence of our being, the silent observer behind all experiences. This pure awareness is where the Holy Spirit dwells, not outside us, but as an inseparable part of our very existence. When we become deeply aware, when we are fully present in the now, the presence of the Spirit naturally reveals itself. Most people search for divine connection in external rituals, words, and doctrines. While these can serve as beautiful pathways, they are not the presence itself. True connection arises when one is completely in tune with the present moment, fully aware, fully here. It is in this state of deep presence that the Holy Spirit is most vividly experienced. It is not a thought, not an idea, but an undeniable feeling of peace, clarity, and profound love that transcends personal identity. In moments of deep awareness, there is a shift. Fear dissolves, worries fade, and a sense of inner spaciousness emerges. This is not something one must strive for. Rather, it is something one must allow. The Holy Spirit does not force its way into our consciousness. It waits patiently for us to become still enough to notice it. It does not speak in loud commands, but in the gentle whisper of intuitive knowing, in the quiet certainty that arises when the mind is no longer clouded by distraction. To live in the awareness of the Holy Spirit's presence is to move through life with a sense of trust and deep peace. It does not mean the absence of challenges or difficulties, but it means that even in the midst of them, there is an unshakable stillness within, a knowing that we are held, that we are guided, and that we are never truly alone. This presence is not found in a distant heaven or in rare mystical experiences. It is found in the simple act of being fully here, fully awake in this very moment. Therefore, we do not need to seek the Holy Spirit as if it is something separate from us. We only need to recognize what has been present all along, By becoming deeply aware, by allowing stillness to enter our lives, we open ourselves to a profound truth. The Holy Spirit is here, now and always, as the very presence of our own conscious being. Silence is often misunderstood in today's world. Many perceive it as emptiness, a void that must be filled with noise, words, or activity. However, silence is far from empty. It is alive, vibrant, and full of presence. It is in silence that we become aware of something deeper than the constant movement of thoughts, emotions, and external distractions. It is in silence that we begin to sense the Holy Spirit, not as an external force, but as a profound presence that has been with us all along. The human mind is conditioned to seek answers outside itself. It looks for wisdom in words, in books, in teachings, and in the voices of others. While these sources can point the way, they are not the experience itself. True spiritual connection does not arise from accumulating knowledge. It arises from direct experience. This experience is only possible when we become still enough to perceive what has always been present. Silence is not an absence of something. It is the doorway to divine awareness. When we sit in silence, we may initially notice a flood of thoughts. The mind races, recalling memories, creating plans, analyzing situations, and seeking distractions. But if we simply observe without resistance, something begins to shift. The thoughts lose their grip, and a deeper stillness emerges. This stillness is not forced. It is always there, waiting beneath the surface of mental noise. It is in this stillness that the Holy Spirit reveals itself, not through words or images, but through a deep sense of peace and presence. Peace and presence. Many believe that hearing the voice of the Holy Spirit means receiving direct messages or supernatural signs. While these experiences can happen, the Spirit most often speaks in a language beyond words. It communicates through intuition, through a sudden clarity, through a deep knowing that arises when we are fully present. This is why silence is essential. Without silence, there is no space to hear, to perceive, to recognize the presence that has always been there. Consider the way a musician listens before playing a note. A true musician does not simply create sound. They first attune themselves to the silence, to the space between the notes. Without this awareness, the music would be chaotic and meaningless. In the same way, our connection to the Holy Spirit depends on our ability to listen, not with our ears, but with our entire being. This listening requires no effort, only openness. In silence, we also become aware of our resistance. We may notice fear, discomfort, or an urge to fill the quiet with distractions. This resistance is the ego's way of maintaining control. The ego thrives on noise, on constant activity, on identification with thought. But when we allow ourselves to simply be, without needing to change anything, we step beyond the ego's grip. We enter into a space of pure awareness, where the presence of the Holy Spirit is undeniable. This presence does not come and go. It is not something that appears only in moments of prayer or deep contemplation. It is always here. The only difference is whether we are aware of it. When we cultivate silence in our lives, not just in moments of meditation, but in our everyday interactions, we create space for the Holy Spirit to guide us. We begin to notice its influence in the smallest details, in the way we respond to others, in the way we perceive challenges, in the way we move through life with greater ease and trust. Living in alignment with the Spirit does not mean withdrawing from the world. It means engaging with life from a place of deep presence. When we embrace silence, we do not become passive. We become more attuned, more awake. We act not from fear or impulse, but from a deep inner knowing. The Holy Spirit does not demand that we do more. It simply invites us to be more aware, more present, more open to the sacred dimension that exists in every moment. Ultimately, silence is not an escape from life. It is the gateway to life in its truest form. It is in silence that we realize we are not separate from the divine presence we seek. The Holy Spirit is not something distant or hidden. It is here, in the space between our thoughts, in the stillness that holds everything together. When we embrace silence, we do not lose anything. We gain everything. To live in alignment with the Holy Spirit is to live in a state of deep awareness where every thought, word, and action flows from a place of divine presence rather than from fear, ego, or conditioned patterns. The Holy Spirit is not a force outside of us that intervenes only in certain moments. It is an ever-present reality that seeks to express itself through our lives. However, in order for this to happen, we must become receptive. We must learn to recognize the subtle ways in which the Spirit moves within us and align ourselves with its guidance. Many people associate spiritual connection with moments of prayer, worship, or sacred rituals. While these can be beautiful and powerful, they are not the only avenues through which the Holy Spirit speaks. The presence of the Spirit is not confined to certain times or places. It is available in every moment, in every breath, in the simplest aspects of daily life. When we shift our awareness and begin to live in alignment with this presence, we realize that spirituality is not separate from ordinary existence. It is woven into it. Living in alignment with the Holy Spirit begins with presence. This means being fully aware of the moment, free from the constant pull of past regrets and future anxieties. The mind, by its nature, tends to dwell in memories or project itself into imagined scenarios, but the spirit does not exist in these mental constructs. It exists only in the present. When we bring our full attention to what is happening right now, we create space for the Spirit to guide us. This guidance does not always come as a loud command or an obvious sign. More often, it arises as a deep sense of knowing, a quiet certainty that directs us toward what is right, peaceful, and true. Another aspect of alignment is surrender. To surrender does not mean to give up or to become passive. Rather, it means to let go of resistance, to trust that the Holy Spirit is always working through us, even when we do not fully understand the path ahead. The ego wants control. It wants to plan, predict, and ensure that everything happens according to its expectations. But true alignment comes when we release this need for control and allow life to unfold as it is meant to. This does not mean we stop making decisions or taking action. It means that our actions come from a place of deep trust rather than fear or force. Compassion and love are also natural expressions of a life aligned with the Holy Spirit. When we are truly present, we begin to see others not as separate from us, but as reflections of the same divine presence that exists within ourselves. Judgment, resentment, and conflict arise when we are disconnected from this awareness. But when we recognize the Spirit within, we naturally extend kindness, understanding, and forgiveness. Love is not something we have to create or force. It is the natural state of being when we are no longer caught in the illusion of separateness. Living in alignment also means listening. The Holy Spirit speaks in many ways, not just through thoughts or feelings, but through the world around us, through the people we encounter, through the challenges and opportunities that arise in our lives. Every experience carries a message, a lesson, an invitation to grow. When we approach life with openness rather than resistance, we begin to see that nothing is random. Everything is part of a greater unfolding, a deeper movement of divine intelligence guiding us toward awakening. Gratitude plays a key role in this alignment. When we are truly in tune with the Spirit, we recognize the sacredness of even the smallest things: a smile from a stranger, the warmth of the sun, the rhythm of our own breath. Instead of waiting for extraordinary moments to feel grateful, we realize that every moment is extraordinary when we are fully present. Gratitude shifts our perception, allowing us to see that life itself is a gift, a constant flow of grace. Ultimately, to live in alignment with the Holy Spirit is to live in harmony with life itself. It is to trust, to surrender, to love, and to remain present in each moment. This is not something we achieve once and for all, but something we practice continuously. There will be moments when we forget, when we get caught in the noise of the mind or the demands of the world, but the beauty of the Spirit is that it never leaves us. It is always here, patiently waiting for us to return to awareness, to recognize its presence once again. And when we do, we find that we were never truly separate from it in the first place. Transformation is a natural result of awareness. The more we become present, the more we awaken to the deeper reality of the Holy Spirit within us. This transformation is not forced. It does not happen through effort alone, nor is it something we must struggle to attain. Instead, it unfolds naturally when we step beyond the limitations of fear, doubt, and identification with the mind. When we live in awareness, the Holy Spirit leads us into a state of profound peace, clarity, and inner freedom. For many people, life feels like a constant struggle, an endless cycle of desires, worries, and unresolved emotions. The mind clings to the past, replays old wounds, and projects fears into the future. In this state, we live reactively, guided by conditioned patterns rather than by divine wisdom. However, awareness changes everything. The moment we become truly present, we begin to see life differently. We realize that we are not our thoughts, not our emotions, not the roles we play. Beneath all of this, there is something deeper, an unshakable presence, stillness that is always there. This is the presence of the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit does not operate through fear or force. It does not impose itself upon us. Rather, it waits for us to become still enough to perceive it. In this stillness, we begin to notice subtle but powerful shifts. Old fears lose their intensity. Worries that once seemed overwhelming begin to dissolve. We experience a new sense of trust, not because we suddenly have control over life, but because we no longer need to. The Spirit teaches us that we are always supported, always guided, even when circumstances appear uncertain. One of the most profound transformations that awareness brings is the release of suffering. Suffering is not caused solely by external events, but by our resistance to them. When we argue with reality, when we cling to expectations, when we define ourselves by our pain, we create suffering. The Holy Spirit gently invites us to let go, not by suppressing emotions, but by seeing them for what they are. When we observe our thoughts and emotions without attachment, we create space for healing. The pain does not have to define us. We begin to understand that we are not the storm. We are the sky that holds it. With this awareness comes freedom. Freedom from anxiety, from self-doubt, from the need to prove anything to anyone. The Holy Spirit leads us to a place where we no longer seek validation from the world, because we recognize our inherent worth. We no longer feel the need to control everything because we trust in the divine intelligence that orchestrates life itself. This freedom does not mean we stop engaging with life. It means we engage with it fully, but without attachment, without fear. Another transformation that arises through awareness is the deepening of love and compassion. When we are caught in the mind's endless chatter, we see others through the lens of judgment, comparison, or expectation. But when we are fully present, we recognize the Spirit in everyone. We no longer react from ego. We respond from love. Relationships change. Conflicts soften. We begin to listen, not just with our ears, but with our hearts. We forgive more easily, not because we condone hurtful actions, but because we no longer wish to carry the burden of resentment. Love, which is the essence of the Holy Spirit, begins to flow through us effortlessly. This transformation is not reserved for a select few. It is available to anyone who chooses to wake up to the present moment. The Holy Spirit is not something to be attained. It is already here. It is already here. Our only task is to become aware of it. This awareness is not something mystical or distant. It is immediate, accessible in every breath, every step, every moment. When we live in this awareness, we begin to see the world differently. Instead of obstacles, we see opportunities for growth. Instead of fear, we feel trust. Instead of separation, we experience unity. This is the work of the Holy Spirit, not to change the external world for us, but to transform us from within, so that we see everything through the eyes of divine love and wisdom.